All right, good evening, everybody. Oh, listen to this mic. Boy, that really echoes it out. Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting for February 24th, 2018. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. Excuse me. I am looking for approval of the agenda. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 4, release of in-camera resolutions. There are a couple in-camera resolutions I need to release. I'm just going to read it directly. There has been Heritage Commission member appointments. Council has appointed the following to serve on the Heritage Commission with the term to expire on March 1st, 2021. Jeffrey R. Bird, Josh Christensen, Peter DeVries, Sandra Hudson, Kate Humble, Ken Johnson, Richard Lindsay, and Jenny Seaman. And further, that Councillor Baxter be appointed as the council representative and Councillor Day be appointed as the alternate council representative to serve in the absence of the appointed member. In addition to that, there is a West Shore Park and Rec and Community Service Agreement. And that the West Shore Parks, Recs, and Community Service Agreement and the West Shore Park and Rec Operating Maintenance and Management Agreement has been approved with a term to commence on March 1st, 2020 to February 28th, 2025. And that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute this agreement. That is the in-camera resolutions. Moving on to public participation. Members of the public will be provided an opportunity to present concerns or ask questions of council. Comments pertaining to a matter that has been the subject of a public hearing are prohibited where the bylaws related to that matter have not been presented to council for consideration. Is there any public? All right. Then I am going to move on to Mayor's message. I have just a couple things to mention. First of all, I have a card that was sent to me, and this is from the Habitat Acquisition Trust. And on behalf of HAT, we wanted to take a moment to thank the City of Colwood for their ongoing support and generous contributions to the HAT for the work that we do at and for Havenwood Park, including coordinating restoration events, the Friends of Havenwood Park, along with collaborating with partners like the Greater Victoria Green Team and Royal Bay High School to ensure the park remains an ecological gem that it is. And they thanked me for that and council, so I just wanted to bring that to you. Just for the general public, if the public is not aware, council is presently in budget deliberations. We will be meeting again tomorrow night, which would be Tuesday, and would encourage people to come down for a 6 p.m. Budget meeting. As well, last week I had the privilege of attending the provincial budget speech, and there wasn't a lot in it, I'm afraid. So not much I can talk about unless you'd like to talk about fizzy drinks and Netflix. As well, last week I was invited to, and I was thrilled to attend the BC Ferries naming of 2 island class vessels, the Island Discovery and the Island Aurora. And what was great about visiting those was they are both hybrids presently. I got to see the battery room. There are 2 battery rooms and they're only 1/4 full presently. Presently, the ferries only operate about 20% on the battery. The other time they have to be running off of the engines. And the biggest stumbling block right now is weight. And so that what I'm being told by BC Ferries is that as the weight continues to lower on these batteries, they will continue to move more of those into the battery rooms, and eventually they will completely transition to being fully 100% electric, as well as once the infrastructure on land has been put in place. BC Ferries is a great partner, and I continue to work with them very closely regarding the West Shore Ferry, and really hopefully some exciting things to talk about in the months to come. Finally, the last thing was on Friday night, I attended in Vancouver the Open for Business Awards. There were 70 submissions for that, 70 different municipalities within the classification of 5 to 25,000, and we were in the top 3. Which was a very big thing. So basically demonstrating to the communities that we are open for business. The examples we used were the food trucks, the Eats and Beats. And one of the things I didn't even know that I learned while I was there was that 2 of those food trucks have actually moved into bricks and mortar businesses. So basically demonstrating that the need is there. And so that's quite exciting as well. I know there some councillors did some other things this last weekend, so I will look to council. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I do want to give a shout out to the Greater Victoria Green Team who worked their collective butts off Saturday. Councillor Jansen and I spent about 3.5 to 4 hours with them, pulling broom and blackberry in Murray's Pond Park behind Royal Bay School, and Public Works will see a massive pile along the trail there, and it was equivalent to about 90 hours of free labor, essentially, and it's made a hell of an impact. So a shout out to them, and I think the next event is the 8th of March, as I understand it. Great. At Perimeter Park.
Thank you. One of the things I failed to mention was also the attendance of the majority of council too, which was great, to the Coldest Night of the Year event. The Coldest Night of the Year event, unfortunately Councillor Parkinson was in Alberta at the time, but the rest of us were able to attend. And there were 178 walkers. We fundraised just around $22,000 for and that was to go to Pacific Family Services and to our place. And I really believe that the uptake will be quite significant in the years to come. It was great to see people really engaged in taking care of each other. So, lovely event, and thank you all for attending. I really appreciate that. I think that speaks loudly of this council that you all stepped up. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to point out that the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues also participated in the Coldest Night of the Year walk, and our chair, Marnie Essery, in her wheelchair, was doing the walk, and I was pretty impressed to see another gentleman out in his wheelchair as well. So lots of people of different abilities all working together to make sure that there are good options for people out there.
Thank you. Okay, nobody else. I'm going to move on then to adoption and receipt of the minutes for the regular council meeting of February 10th. Have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to correspondence requiring council direction. There is a letter from Laurie Davis, the treasurer of the Society for Arts of the Southern Vancouver Island Coast Collective Arts Center Initiative, regarding a request for a letter of support of the community gaming grant. There is a recommendation in your agenda. Sorry, it's Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation and that we support this this application on their behalf.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Seconded. Discussion. Councillor Day, are you looking for discussion? Okay.
Sure. Just to say that we have provided letters in the past. It's a great initiative for us to support. They're applying for a grant so that they can use the grant monies to help put on the student art show that they put on every year, as well as classes, etc. It's a great initiative and one that supports all of our students and all of our families.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposes. Moving on to 9.1, which is the Development Services Status Report 2019 Summary. There is a recommendation from the February 3rd Committee of the Whole. I will look to staff if they wish to make any comments regarding 9.1. No, there is no staff. So may I have a motion, please? And then we can have discussion. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Parkinson, which is that the staff return to council with minor amendments to the urban forest bylaw number 1735 to improve cost recovery. Discussion. It's Councillor Day, then Parkinson.
Thank you. I just wish to say that I appreciate that minor amendments do need to be done, but in terms of cost recovery, this has been quite onerous on some families who live amiably with the trees in their yards, but it has added some additional cost burdens onto them. So I am hopeful that when the amendments come back, they will not be terribly onerous for homeowners who don't always have the resources to add more money to the city's coffers. It's a real service to all of Colwood to have an urban forest.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Well, I guess along the same lines, I see that the thought is that there's a lot of tree permit applications and the costs aren't covering, or the fees aren't covering the costs. So obviously there's two approaches that could be being considered here on the minor amendments. You could, of course, raise the fees, or you could reduce the amount of work from the staff. I wonder if we know which way we're going yet.
Yep.
So work has already started on reviewing the bylaw, which is difficult because the recommendations as put forward in that bylaw were established by So to try and keep the spirit of the committee that was struck to establish this urban forest bylaw, the recommendations are coming down to how we can thin out the staff involvement in the process. Presently, right now, the whole bylaw is acting as a notification schedule ultimately. We're dealing mostly with hazardous trees. So that's what we're reviewing right now. We've done preliminary work to bring back those minor amendments, but we're also being sensitive to the works of the previous committee that established those resolutions, working with council.
Okay, I guess I will call the question if there's no other discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 9.2, which is the Royal Bay. This is recommendations from the February 3rd, 2020 Committee of the Whole. I will look to staff. There is a comment the staff wish to make.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. In regards to 9.2 and moving to page 6 of 37 of your agenda package, item under building, which is top quarter of the page, building item number 1, a minimum of step code 3 of the energy step code or the level adopted by council at the time of building permit application, which is the most restrictive, be achieved. The developers requested options in regard to this singular statement, and the staff intend to bring back options when we return to council for the consideration of the zone for that. The options are in regards to the actions also being undertaken by the city in terms of establishing a bylaw for the step code implementation.
Okay, thank you. What I would like to do is, I think there is some discussion on this possibly, but I would like to get the motion first and then call the questions. So is there a mover and seconder, and then we'll go to questions? Or thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan. Seconded. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I prepared a short submission for everybody after receiving an email from a concerned citizen about what has happened in the past at the Bluffs, at Royal Bay, well, not the Bluffs, that's a bad name to call it, the end of Far Hill Road, where a number of the properties have experienced significant sloughing of the bank down to the ocean. And among the things that were pointed out in the email that I received were what has happened in the district of Seashelt with the homes that were approved in 2006, built, and then subsequently became completely not valuable anymore due to sinkholes, which were known prior to the development being approved by Seashelt. Particularly, I've included a number of articles that in the newspaper, and basically there are many lawsuits ongoing, and nobody really knows who to sue over the situation. So if it is the district of Seashelt, then indeed all of the taxpayers of Seashelt will be paying should the lawsuit be successful. On August 22nd, it was reported that 8 lawsuits had been filed and more are coming in. This also happened back in 2005 in North Vancouver, where a woman was in fact killed by the landslide, and her daughter still maintains a website. She was away at boarding school and therefore was not hurt. Her father was sent to hospital and her mother was killed. Over the years, what she learned was that the mudslide could have been avoided, that North Vancouver knew that there were risks, and the assumption was that if it wasn't safe, they wouldn't have been allowed to build a house there. So I'm asking for Colwood to identify if there are subsequent problems with the cliff in Royal Beach, that we would identify who would be held responsible and what the process would be. And if it's a court process, who is paying for the court time, and whether or not all of the residents of Colwood would have to pay for the decisions made today in the event of slope failure or other geotechnical problems. If anyone would be personally responsible, if the developer will be held accountable, what happens if the developer sells the property, and who would compensate the affected residents for the mental anguish, pain, and suffering. So I'm hoping we could just, at the very least, if we believe that that's a safe development to do, then could we please just outline what the steps would be?
So, Councillor Day, is that a question, or is that just direction that you're hoping that staff would just take that as they move forward with the rest of the motion?
Sorry, they are...
Oh, hold on, sorry. I gotta give you back. There you go.
Sorry, they are questions, but I don't expect staff to be able to answer them on the spot.
Okay.
I do understand that they would need to seek advice to answer those questions.
Okay, great.
And I would just like to have those questions and their answers made available to the public.
Okay. Robert?
Thank you, Your Worship. If Council is desirous, administration could return at the next meeting and provide an overview of how the municipality works to ensure the safety of the public and their property through the development process, and protect the municipality from liability at the same time.
Okay. Tell me your needs. Sure. Okay, thank you. Councillor Baxter.
At Committee of the Whole, when this came up, I spoke about the need to have a non-zero commercial minimum. And I just wanted to formalize that as we're actually moving our instructions to staff, and I wanted to make sure that we included this in there. So what I'm proposing is an amendment to the motion in item 9.2. So in the first paragraph, there are 2 numbered subparagraphs, 1 and 2, and this would occur at the end of paragraph 2. And added to the end would be, and shall not be less than a minimum number to be decided by council. And for those who've got this on paper, I'm just inserting a few words here now. Based on options provided by staff, and then carrying on before completion of first reading of the bylaw. So, and shall not be less than a minimum number to be decided by council based on options provided by staff before completion of first reading of the bylaw. I'm moving that as an amendment.
Okay, thank you. Before I look to a seconder, and I will look for a seconder in a moment, I'm just going to look to staff. If staff have seen this motion ahead of time at all, or if they wish to make any comments. RCA.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just, in the few minutes in advance of the meeting, were provided a copy. At this juncture, we can't provide specific advice as to how we might achieve this, but we are more than happy to endeavor to have a look.
Okay, thank you. All right, saying that, I'm going to come back to the motion. So Councillor Baxter has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Jensen. Thank you. Discussion regarding the motion? Sorry, hit your button. Sorry. It's Councillor Day.
Never know whether to hit the button or put my finger up, so I'm still all adjusting here. I'm not sure that I completely understand the amendment, so I'm just going to ask my very simplistic question, which is this in order to assure a certain amount of commercial development?
And I will go to Councillor, sorry, I got to take Baxter off, and then, can you click, oh, sorry. Yeah, give me a moment. Here we go.
That is the intent of the amendment to the motion, yes.
Councillor Day, follow up?
Thank you. So that is in line with considerations that I was trying to capture earlier today, in that a number of residents from Royal Bay have gone to great effort to request that we honor the spirit of the OCP, which I guess if I had to encapsulate in like one sentence what the desired effect of the official community plan was, it was to move from a bedroom community to a living room community. And we can't have a living room community if we don't have commercial development. So I think this is a good step towards ensuring that we don't end up with just residential development and not the full picture that the residents identified when we were creating our OCP.
Thank you. So on the amendment, Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, just a couple of things on the amendment. We can all wish for all the commercial development we like down there, but I think it's economics that's going to determine what actually may happen there. I would think some of the language may talk about wanting commercial on the lower floors of a number of the buildings that may be proposed or something like that. As I read the Urbanics report, or the sections of it that were part of what we received, they talk about a maximum based on their projections, which are increased from the Collier's projections that we saw at this table not that long ago. I think a maximum of 400,000 square feet. My reading of that report, and again, I think so far I've only seen sections, I don't have the whole thing, was that would mean all of Royal Bay was 400,000 square feet roughly of commercial, which means we'd subtract out the commons, which is roughly half of that. And so that's what the developer's consultant is telling us is perhaps a realistic maximum commercial development at the end of the day, you know, whatever that may be, if the whole thing ever gets built in the way it's talked about. So I think we have to temper our desires along those lines and our wishes, and you know, how we quite say if there's 200,000 square feet roughly in Royal Beach, you know, we'd all love it to be 200,000 square feet of pubs and nice restaurants, or at least some of us would. But you know, what that looks like will be determined by economics. So I think we have to be a little bit careful saddling a developer with a bunch of empty retail spaces, and nobody's benefit, in my opinion. So, yes, I think we want commercial down there. Yes, we want some real funky commercial, but let's be careful what we ask for and how we do it. I'm not opposed to asking for it and sort of trying to initiate it early, but I just want to say that if it's not economic, it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. And that was discussed at the Committee of the Whole. And I suggested at the time that staff would probably approach the developer, and between them they would come up with a number that everybody can live with. But it's interesting from the numbers you've presented, it is highly unlikely that 800,000 square feet, as written in this motion, will ever be built. And I think that demonstrates that the numbers being asked for by the developer might well be more about selling the property on than any intention to actually build. And all the more reason why I think we do need a minimum, although we have to be careful about it. I would also point out that any minimum that ends up in the bylaw is always negotiable, as indeed I quoted last time the case of Latoria Walk, where the minimum was stuck to, but the developer got more residential to help him pay for creating it, because there is a cost while the developer waits until he can get somebody to fill the commercial space.
Sorry, excuse me, Councillor Jensen, then Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship.
Oh, sorry, wait a second, that was my fault. Hold on. My apology, I double-clicked. I know. There you go, you're on now.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Baxter. And I think the experience of some of our members who have been here longer, to Councillor Parkinson's point, I think if we include some kind of minimum threshold, whatever that might be, it's well beyond me. I'll leave that to others. It reflects our desire to move towards a component of commercial down there, which is a reflection of what we're hearing from our residents. So I hear what Councillor Parkinson's saying. I am supportive of what Councillor Baxter is saying, that we do need to reflect what it is we're trying to achieve down there. And I would hate to see this as a bait and switch, where 2 years from now someone else owns it and it's 100% residential and it looks nothing like what we've seen. I would rather that if they feel they can't accomplish what we're trying to achieve with us, then they can sell it and we'll work with the next developer to achieve what it is we're trying to achieve that's consistent with our OCP. Those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to what Michael's recommending. I understand the rationale behind it. We have to be sensitive how we do it. But when you sort of go, you know, the 800,000 may never get built. I mean, again, the Urbanix report does say 400,000 is a realistic number for commercial, but I believe, and we'll look at clarification presumably before we go too much further, that's for Royal Bay and Royal Beach. And they also talk roughly, I think, 200,000 square feet for perhaps a hotel and a mini conference center, which none of us would object to, I don't believe, and perhaps 200,000 for some kind of educational institution, which my sense is a little ambitious, but again, I don't think any of us would complain if it happened. So let's not say, you know, let's not be too negative here. They're saying what they do. I think perhaps where I sort of support your thinking, but worry about it more so, is on issues such as the DCCs that we may have for roads, or I see there's talk of sewers and there's talk of fire hall too, perhaps. If we set those based on targets that don't get achieved, then we do have a real jam. If we say, yeah, you can build a bunch of commercial if you can fill it, we're happy with that. That probably doesn't put us in the same kind of jam as saying you have to build, you know, 400,000 square feet of commercial, and we won't have enough money to build the roads to get people to and from your site. So that's more where I worry about the numbers and their achievability and not. So I think we're still on the amendment. aren't
Yeah, we are.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
so I'm about to call the question on the amendment. So I'm going to call the question on just the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? No one opposes. Moving to the main motion. Are there any other discussion before I call the question? Councillor Parkinson, then Day.
So can I start with some clarity? I mean, there's still a number of things in this that I have concerns and questions on, and I just don't want it to go down the path where all of a sudden we get a presentation. It's either take it or leave it. There are a number of questions that I'm going to throw out here. That I don't look for answers today, except that I do think that there are things that I would need to see addressed to believe we're getting a complete presentation. Now, I did talk to the owner's agent after the last meeting, and she's excited about being able to give us a proposal that answers all our questions and basically blows our socks off, and I look forward to that. But there are a number of things that I don't want to lose track of, and I just not sure at what point I should be injecting them, or when I have to stamp my feet and say we got to deal with this now, or when I sort of say, well, hopefully it's coming, and I don't want to get jammed at the end to say it hasn't come. So again, I've marked this up, and I'm sorry I've been a little distracted last week, so I don't have a lot of coherence to what I'm saying. Yeah, the developer will, under sewer, the developer will be responsible to construct all necessary on-site works, including any pump stations, facilities, as described in the sewer master plan, as approved by the city in a manner that enables regional development of the basis. But it seems to say that the off-site works will be funded elsewhere, and perhaps because there are other developers contributing to overloading of off-site sewers, there may be another mechanism. But to me, if you're coming to our community wanting to be part of the city of Colwood, and you should count yourself fortunate to be in such a great place, and you should be saying, how do I participate in the community? What's my share of what's going on? And not, I'll do what's on my site, and the stuff down the stream is somebody else's problem. So I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but it's a concern I have, and I would like to be confident of before this thing really goes through. We talk about some kind of drainage plan. I worry about the ultimate discharge of storm drainage from this site. If it's just dumped on the beach, even with the settling ponds that may be there now and maybe there in the future, may be sized, I'm not sure, right? We don't want to just be discharging a great gush of water across our beach that's eroding already. Is there going to be a need for an outfall, or is there some other mechanism that's required? Again, I think there's talk of a sewer master plan coming. My pet hobby horse that I've talked about a number of times is the pump stations. I would dearly love to see there's 3 pump stations on Royal Bay site now. They're talking of adding a 4th. I would like to see that minimized any way possible. I think there's some huge operational cost savings to the city if that could be done, and possibly even some cost savings to the developer by relocating facilities from the existing pump station as opposed to building all new. Another one of my pet peeves that's in here that I would like to see addressed before we go any further is the amenity fees and affordable housing fees. In my opinion, those fees were set in, I think, 1994 or sometime very early on in the Royal Bay days, and you have to respect any businessman who agrees to set his costs at 1994 rates for a project that's going to go on for the next 20 or 30 years. I don't believe those are the correct numbers going forward, and that there should be discussion at this table on exactly what they should be and what makes sense. Yeah, and I can't read half of my own writing, which is another problem I have when I do things in too much of a hurry. Machosen Road I talked about last time, the discussion as it should mirror what's on the other side as in Latoria South. I'm very concerned, the fact that the land at that part between Latoria Boulevard and Machosen rises up on the water side of the land, and they're talking of putting cover on the settling ponds and building above them. It seems to me that even a 2 or 3 story building may tower over top of 2 or 3 story buildings on the other side. And there's also the issue of what about the views as you drive down the road, and are you blocking it off so it's kind of walling off. So these are not new comments. I've made them before. The developer knows I have them, and hopefully will be part of their presentation. Yeah, I've talked about that. I see we have talk about the fire hall and funding for that. I look forward to that. Interesting that the in section 6 under financial consideration, the amenity fees and affordable housing fees both seem to apply to apartment dwellings, but not necessarily to townhouse or single family development. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's the way it's written, and it would surprise me if that was the intent, but perhaps we'll get some more information on that at some point. And I think that's sort of a highlight of just some things that I will be looking forward as we go forward, and frankly would have a tough time supporting this project without suitable answers.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So the number of units that have been proposed on the entire Royal Beach site to not exceed 2,850. That is 50 units more than was approved originally under the Master Development Agreement for the entirety of the Royal Bay area. So one of the things that we heard from the developer was that commercial and residential needed to go hand in hand. So what I would like to see happen is that there are some benchmarks that after X number of residential units are put in, X square feet of commercial will be put in, so that the developer is actually held to account for his comments in this chamber, and the residents can expect to get what they've been promised would happen. Until such time as I see that there are some sort of benchmarks in that regard, I won't be able to support the project, because in my opinion, we have seen a lot of residential development in Royal Bay and zero so far. And that development has been ongoing since 1999. So in 20 years, we don't have a single commercial development in Royal Bay. And without some assurances that that won't be the case going forward, I can't support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing nobody else, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Please note that Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to bylaws. Bylaw 10.1, bylaw number 1799, Colwood Main Sewer LSA 3241 Wishart Road, first, second, third reading.
Move introduction.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Jensen. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody opposes. On second reading, discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody opposes. On third reading, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 10.2, bylaw number 1800, Colwood West Sewer LSA 3241 Wishart Road, first, second, and third reading.
Move first.
Thank you. Move Councillor Baxter. Seconder, Councillor Parkinson, Shiley. On first, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On second, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On third, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 10.3, bylaw number 1801, Colwood Main LSA 616 Hallsor. Is it Hallsor? Hallsor? Hallsor. First, second, third reading.
Move first.
Thank you. Move Councillor Baxter. Second by Councillor Logan. On first reading, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On second reading, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No one. On third reading, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to bylaw number 1802, Colwood Central Sewer LSA 616, Hallsor. First, second, third reading. Moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Baxter. On first, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On second, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On third, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Logan. All those in favor? Carried.